My head is such a mess right now. I don't even know where to begin, but please, I need help. My name is Katie, I'm 24, and share an apartment with my slightly older boyfriend Dan. Before I begin, I think you should know that I have a history of recurring dreams. Nothing deep. One that always stood out, that I had quite frequently, involved a zombie apocalypse. I would realize it was happening and try and warn my family, but they dismissed it, which resulted in us all being caught. I would then have the dream again, and it was a sense of deja vu. And every dream I would try a new tactic to get my family to run, and every time they would dismiss it. Eventually, I would give up. I left them behind and ran to save myself. I hadn't had the dream since.
Very occasionally, I would suffer from sleep paralysis.
I tell you this because it's irrelevant, and at first I thought that's all it was, but this is different, and I'm scared. It started about 4 weeks ago. In my dream, I was in this beautiful but overgrown green field, surrounded by forest. It was warm, the sky was blue, and everything was pleasant. Then this little girl appears, and I'd say she must have been about 6. She's cute, long straight dark hair halfway down her back, long pale lavender dress with a light pink trim, white tights and black shoes, and topped off with a hat. It's a straw hat, neat, but of an odd shape, with flowers tucked into the bow. Her clothes aren't what you call modern. I never ask her name, but every time I'm there, she asks me to play, so I think why not, and we play. Eventually I wake up and everything's fine and dandy as you would expect. And then things started to turn. The first time I noticed something odd was 2 weeks ago on Sunday night. It was business as usual. We met, she asks to play, we play. Then for the first time, the dream takes an ever so slightly, until it had run like clockwork, different turn. She noticed my bracelet. It was nothing of value, or even that sentimental, really. My mother bought it back as a gift from vacation, and it was made of plastic little beads of different colors. The threadings with pieces of string. The little girl seemed to be quite taken with it. She asked if she could wear it. Sure, why not? It was a dream after all. Things carried on as normal. Have you guessed? The next morning I couldn't find my bracelet. I take it off every night and leave it on my bedside table. I practically tore the room apart looking for it, checking down the sides of the table. I even got Dan to move the bed so I could see if it had slipped underneath. Nothing. It was strange, sure, but at the time I didn't think too much of it. It had to be in the apartment somewhere, so surely it would turn up. The dreams continued for a few days as normal, only the little girl was now wearing my bracelet. Wednesday, 8 nights ago during our play date on Wednesday night, she suddenly became very frightened. Terrified. She cried at me that she had to get home and hide. She had spilt a drink on the rug and her mother would be so angry. She turned and ran to the trees. I tried to follow, but it felt like my feet were stuck in place. I couldn't force my body to move. I awoke. It was still dark out. Dan wasn't beside me in bed, so it couldn't have been that late. We rarely go to bed at the same hour. I get tired around 10, but he can happily sit up until 1 or 2, and sometimes even 3 on the PlayStation. I don't know if the dream just spooked me, as the turn was so unexpected, but something was wrong. I was so sure that I wasn't alone in that room. I felt terrified. My body was stiff. All I could do was stare into the darkness, expecting something horrific to jump at me. But nothing came. The feeling passed and I was able to go back to sleep. Saturday, 5 nights ago. Saturday night, the dream started fine. The little girl greeted me in the field, wearing my bracelet, and asked me to play. We played. Then things changed. She had her back to me and she froze. For a moment, I thought she was going to cry and run again, but she stood there silently. I noted that things had grown darker. The grass was more of a dry yellow and the sky had turned gray. She turned to me expressionless. Mama doesn't like you. I don't know what happened, but it felt like everything closed in. I was terrified, and I didn't even know why or of what. I looked up, and that's when I saw a woman standing at the edge of the woods. She was thin, plain, but beautiful. Her hair was a chestnut brown and tied up high in a bun. She wore a long, very outdated maroon dress. She didn't look frightening Under any other circumstances, I would have thought her harmless. In fact, every part of me wanted to get away from her as fast as possible. In that instant, I woke up, or so I hoped. It was the first time I saw her. For a moment, the room was dark and still. Moonlight shone through the crack in the curtains, illuminating enough to see every silhouette. I could see the television, switched off but mounted on the wall, my chest of drawers against the wall to the right of me. Our apartment is only small, so unfortunately it doesn't leave much walking room. I could see the vase I always kept on top of it, filled with paper roses. I could see my bedside table with my lamp on it, and I knew it was within reach if only I could convince my arm to move. And I could see her. If you could even call it a her, I mean. I felt it was female, but it was certainly no woman. It started as darkness by the foot of the bed, a shadow that I knew did not belong. Then it grew, and she climbed her way onto the bed, slowly crawling towards me, gripping the covers as she dragged herself further. Her limbs were long, too long, out of proportion and skinny. They bent at unnatural angles and clicked and creaked with each movement. Her skin looked like ash, uneven shades and splotches of gray. She wore no clothing, but her body wasn't that of a naked human woman. It was shapeless and dark. And the smell, oh God, the smell. Every part of me desperately wanted to move my body, anything to fight her off, or try and run for the door, or even scream out, but I was powerless. She reached my face. Thin black hair hung around her pale, bloated face, dangling down on mine. Small black eyes stared at me as her jaw loosely hung. She just stayed that way, inches from me, staring and croaking like something being choked and struggling for air. I was sure that her twisted face would be the last thing I saw. I was gasping and trying to scream, but no noise would leave me. And then she left. Sunday, 4 nights ago. If you didn't know, sleep paralysis can leave you feeling pretty drained. I was dead on my feet at work. Fortunately, we close early on Sundays. I have never been so grateful. I'd had to try and laugh off the various comments and jokes from the customers about how I should have gone to bed earlier, and I'm sorry, am I keeping you awake? Haha, if you hadn't guessed, I work in a store, and I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed it. Though, being there has led me to meet some great people. It was a small convenience store, 4 aisles. We rarely have more than 3 people on the store floor. The manager usually just sits out the back. One of us will be on checkout, where the other 2 others are around the store keeping things tidy and stacking shelves. On Sundays, we only need 2 of us, me on checkout and Sarah on floor. I should tell you, Sarah is amazing. I had only known her since starting a couple of years back, but she's been a great friend, and I've always been able to rely on her. A few minutes back, Dan and I had a rough patch, and I know something happened, but I don't exactly know what or with who, and to be honest, I don't want to. I know some of you tell me that I'm stupid for staying with him, but I do feel he was genuinely sorry. But the point is that she was there for me, and she was there when I needed someone to cry down the phone because I felt like my life was falling apart. And friends like that are special. It hadn't occurred to me to tell her about the dreams before that day, and I didn't think I would have on my own terms until after I served this one. Customer Harris. A lovely but fragile old man with white hair and a few teeth. He lost his wife recently. We think he may be lonely, and sometimes he comes in just to chat. I looked towards the door just in time to see a woman walk in and down one of the aisles. She was thin, with chestnut brown hair, a long maroon dress. Without even thinking about it, I sprang from behind my till and ran to the end of the aisle. Nothing other than the now startled young blonde woman innocently shopping with her baby. I apologized and darted back to the next aisle. I couldn't let her give me the slip. She was a woman from my dream. I knew it. There was nothing. At this point, I noticed my manager storming towards me. She had seen me on the CCTV and the growing customers waiting at my checkout. Maggie! What the hell are you playing at? She demanded at her breath. Me. Maggie, I'm sorry, but I saw this woman and... So what if you saw a woman? Women come in here all the time. Was she shoplifting? Me? What? No. Maggie, you don't understand. I don't care, alright? Just do your job. And with that, she marched back to her office. I awkwardly went back to my checkout, red-faced, and worked my way through the line of people, still eyeing the crowds in case the woman appeared again. She didn't. When the checkout was defeated, Sarah strolled over with an amused grin. Mind telling me what that was? She laughed, and I hesitated. But I knew that if there was anyone I could tell without being completely made a fool of, it would be her. So I told her. I told her about the dreams and how they started, the little girl who now wears my bracelet, the woman in the woods who I would swear on my life I had just seen walk in the store, and the creature from the sleep paralysis the night before. She was fascinated. It was actually her that I suggested that I talk to No Sleep for advice. I said that I would, and I had every intention of coming here sooner, but I guess I just didn't get around to it. Or I didn't understand how serious it was, and foolishly believed that it would pass. Wednesday, last night. For the next couple of nights, the dreams were normal, but I continued to wake up with sleep paralysis. Even though she does the same thing every night, just staring, is still just as terrifying, and I'm as helpless as to move. When Wednesday night came, I saw the little girl, and we played. Then she turned to me and said, "We should play at my house. I think you'll like my cat. His name's Oscar." After being freaked out by the woman in the woods before, I didn't want things to go down that path, especially as I was very sure that she was the little girl's mother, who she had seemed so afraid of. I told her that I can't today, and when she asked about tomorrow without thinking, I agreed. It's just a dream after all. Tomorrow night will be like this dream never happened, and we can start over as always. You promise? Sure, I promise. I woke again to the creature. Once again, she pulled herself along the bed and positioned herself over me, staring. I tried so hard not to breathe in her rancid smell. Creak. The door opened, and Dan had chosen that very moment to come to bed. Before I knew it, she launched off of me and disappeared, knocking the vase from my chest of drawers onto the floor. I have never heard of sleep paralysis physically knocking things over before. I had never been so afraid as I was at that moment. I broke down to Dan and told him everything. I honestly should have told him before, but well, he's a massive skeptic. He was sympathetic but thought nothing of it. It would have been the wind or pure coincidence that the vase fell at that moment. He wouldn't even consider that there was something supernatural involved. Thursday, today. So I got to work and I told Sarah everything. I think a part of me wanted her to laugh and tell me it was all in my head. I was starting to freak, and I wanted to be proven wrong. "That's amazing," she squealed, while slowly pretending to organize the displays in the front of the checkouts, a tactic we all use when we want an excuse to chat to the person on duty. "What did No Sleep say? Have you updated them?" Me, I hesitantly. "Actually, I didn't get around to posting on there. Yeah, the dreams were weird, but that's all they are. Now this, I don't even know what's going on." "You really should. I lurk there sometimes. Sure, a lot of it's made up for kicks, but they're really good with advice. Someone might have been in the same boat before." I was about to brush it off when I realized I promised the little girl I would play with her in her house the next night. Tonight. And if this was really real and it was not just a coincidence, then I had made a promise I really didn't want to keep. So I'm taking Sarah's advice, like I should have done days ago. Please help me. I feel like things are about to get a whole lot worse. First of all, I'm sorry that I'm so late with an update, but I couldn't. I just couldn't go through with it. Especially after the talk of demons and ghosts, I couldn't. Thursday night, I did everything in my power to stay awake. I sat on the couch for hours watching Dan play on the PlayStation and trying to convince myself that I was interested. I drank so much coffee that I was twitching and my head was spinning. I eventually had to move onto the floor as the couch was becoming far too comfortable. Even though I'd always complained, I found it too stiff. Eventually, Dan went to bed. I had him recommend a few games to try and keep myself entertained. Every inch of me was ready to nod off. I made multiple visits to the fridge and the cupboards. Not that I was particularly hungry, I was just so desperate to keep myself occupied. I saw the sun rise, and the sense of relief washed over me. I don't even know why. For some stupid reason, I think a part of me had convinced myself that bad dreams only haunt you at night. I made it until about 4 p.m. Friday without falling asleep. The sun was shining and I was tired enough to forget what fear even felt like, and all I could think about was closing my eyes. And then I fell asleep in the armchair, the book I had been reading still in my hand. And this is when I knew I had arrived. I was standing in a house, a very unpleasant house. I was in a long hallway, the ceilings were so very high, and the windows at the end stretched almost up to the top. I imagine it would have been a beautiful house in its prime. Large wooden doors lined the hallway, and a wide staircase descended at one side end. I must have been on the second floor. The floors were wooden, with a long rug. Statues lined the walls, and I imagine it would have been beautiful. The air felt damp and had a stale smell. Mold grew along the walls, and a cold, lonely chill blew through. I don't think anyone has been here in a long time.
Mommy doesn't like you.
I walked along the hallway, examining the closed door and imagining what could possibly be behind it. I wasn't even sure that I wanted to know. I peered down at the rug as I passed. It was a deep red rug with beautiful golden patterns stitched in, but a large stained ruin in it. For a moment I thought it looked like blood, but then I realized that the stain looked purple, and then I remembered the little girl becoming upset and afraid at the time in the field. She told me that she had spilled a drink on the rug. Could this be it? Suddenly I remembered the events of the dream, and the dreams of the past few weeks. It was her house. Where was she? Did she live here, among the rot? But she was so nicely dressed. Then, I tripped. I had been so lost in thought I hadn't been paying attention. I hadn't seen it lying there before. Somehow, I hadn't smelt it either. A dead animal lay under my feet. It had been there a while. It took me a moment to even realize that it was a cat. It was mostly skeleton, mangled with very little skin and fur attached. It was hers. Was it hers? She did mention having a cat. I began to worry. Where is she? What had happened here? Was a house like this because I was too late? She was expecting me Thursday night. It could have been that time that works differently here. I made it to the window and looked out, trying to get some idea of where I was. I was high up, that was for sure. The window overlooked a large courtyard with a long driveway that disappeared into its trees. It looked like the woodland went on for miles, and then I saw the clearing. The field that we had met and played in so many times before. It wasn't far from here, and I was surprised I hadn't noticed the house before. I suddenly have an overwhelming urge to enter the room on my left. I don't know. Curiosity? I placed a hand on the doorknob, but it felt so cold that I actually jumped slightly. Should I knock? Should I call out? No.
Mommy doesn't like you.
I opened the door slowly. It was heavy, and it gave an almighty creak as I pushed against it. It opened into a bedroom. It was large, and I was sure that you could at least fit half of my apartment in here. Large windows lined two of the walls, curtains still closed, except one hung off the rail at such an angle that it appeared to have been almost ripped down. I walked in. It was untidy. Toys scattered the floor. I had just stepped over one, a wooden duck painted yellow, with wheels and long pieces of string to pull it along. It's then that I noticed that these were just toys that littered the floor. Furniture had been overturned. A nightstand lay on its side, a far meter away from the large four-poster bed. A chair lay broken, one leg snapped off entirely. A broken doll lay in front of it. Then the closet caught my attention. The doors were open. One hung loosely off its hinges, like it had been forced open too hard. Toys piled the floor around it. It looked like they had been kept inside, but something large had been dragged out carelessly. Scratches. On the floor of the closet lay a small row of scratches. A chill ran over me. I returned to look at the room, starting to put the pieces together, and then I noted the wall, back over by the door that I had come through, and I walked and gazed at the drawings stuck on the wall. One in particular caught my attention. They were drawn by a child, family and friends, I imagine, with their names clumsily scribbled underneath. They were all very basic and out of proportion. You are surprised? They are drawn by a 6-year-old. Limbs too long or too short, heads too large or too small, and joints in particular places. I stared at one titled Mama. The gray crayon had been used for her arms and legs, and they were far too long for her body. A thin torso had also been scribbled in with a black crayon. The same crayon had been used for messy hair that hung down the sides of a bloated face, with black eyes dotted unevenly and a crooked smile. I took a step back. The image of the creature from my sleep paralysis flashed in my mind. That was Mama? The same woman in the woods? The woman from the woods was beautiful, but this creature just looked like, well, it was the drawing, the only real, and as if her drawing had come to life. I looked down and saw another drawing, torn into pieces and lying behind the open door. I scooped them together and laid them out. Fortunately, it had not been shredded that many times, and it did not take long to put the pieces back together. Another stick figure drawing, a girl with a brown crayon used for her hair and a green dress. I laughed slightly as I assembled it. I remembered the days when I was little. My friends and I would draw together, but the moment you had a falling out with them, usually over the pettiest little thing, you would tear up that drawing. Nothing said this friendship is over, quite like tearing up a drawing. I placed the last piece at the bottom of the page. Katie. I wanted to vomit. I don't even know how I managed to move, but my legs must have been on autopilot to get me out of that room. I quickly closed the door behind me and stared at the ceiling, breathing deeply and trying to calm down. It's a dream. I am dreaming. I cautiously approached the door on the opposite side of the hall and turned the handle. I opened the door and regretted it instantly. I was greeted with a horrific, rotting stench. I choked and gagged, and I slammed the door shut. It happened to be open just long enough to see that it was a large bathroom. I coughed and spluttered as I tried to clear my senses of the lingering smell. Then came the loud creak. I looked down at the other end of the hall toward the stairwell. A door to the right-hand side, next to the little girl's room, was open. Was it open before? I'm sure it was closed. Hello? I called out, instantly hating myself for calling out. Fantastic! Someone else was in here, and I was sure to be murdered. Nothing. I slowly made my way toward the door. Hello? Is someone there? Oh my God! Why am I calling out? I re-entered the room. I entered the room. It was dark, and the windows were boarded shut. Eerie beams of light shone through the cracks just enough to illuminate the room. There was no one. I stepped in and heard a light crunch beneath my feet. Oh God, please not another cat.
Mommy doesn't like you.
I jumped to one side and gasped slightly. My bracelet was lying on the floor. I delicately picked it up and examined it. There was no doubt about it. I put it in my pocket and scoured the room. It was bigger than the child's room. Must have been the master bedroom. Everything was still carefully still peacefully in place, but ruddled with damp mold. Then I noted the book on the foot of the bed. It was a journal. I would never normally read someone else's journal, but I felt like I had to. I opened and skimmed the first few pages. I stood in the doorway so that I could use the light from the hallway to help me read. It belonged to the woman. A wife. No, an ex-wife. The pages were full of ranting, full of hatred for a husband who had left her for another woman. Apparently, he and the mistress were expecting twins. The words would quickly turn from sadness to anger to anguish. I felt my heart so heavy for her. He had left her and her child to be with some other woman. I turned a few more pages and then saw something that I hadn't noted before. The date on the top corner was the 27th of June, 1905. I felt uneasy. I'd obviously been aware this house was old, but, well, I didn't expect that. I continued to read, and the words slowly started to turn from blaming her husband George to blaming her daughter Elizabeth. Gradually, the entries became more and more about Elizabeth. Her husband had left her because of her. She was such a difficult child. She had too much of an imagination. One page was full of explosives, the handwriting so angry and sharp you would have thought it was written by someone else. I turned a page again. Elizabeth had been talking more and more about her imaginary friend. It was driving her mother crazy. Why couldn't she be a normal child? This is why George left. He wanted to get away from the shame that was their daughter. She tried time and time again to make her daughter leave her imaginary friend behind, but she insisted that she was real. Slowly, my eyes lifted to the painting on the wall. It was a family tree. It was a family of 3. They all seemed so happy. A well-dressed man on the right side, short dark hair and a mustache, well-trimmed beard face. To his left stood a beautiful woman, thin, with chestnut brown hair, the woman from the woods. And in front of them, a little girl, the little girl from the fields, Elizabeth. Suddenly, I let out a scream. I think I let it out before my brain had even realized she was there. A dark figure climbed to the ceiling beside the portrait, hiding in the shadows, its bloated face staring at me from behind its matted black hair. It was her. I fell back out of the room, dropping the diary. I forced myself up and I ran. I'm not one for running. I can barely make it to the end of my road without running out of breath, but somehow I ran faster than I had ever before. I flew down the stairway. I could hear the banging and the scraping following behind me. Oh God, she was chasing me. I couldn't look back. I reached the bottom of the stairs and darted across the hall to the large doors. I could hear the banging, the gurgling, the choking. I reached for the door handle and pulled it open with all of my might. I woke up, still in my armchair, covered in a cold sweat. I went for a shower, and as I got dressed, I felt something in my pocket. My bracelet. I was so tired, but I dare not go to sleep. I'm trying so hard to go to sleep, stay awake. I feel like I need to make sense of things. I now know the little girl's name is Elizabeth. Her father left her mother for another woman, and she has an imaginary friend. Could that be Mama? I had assumed that Mama was her mother. What the hell could have happened in that house? I keep starting to type and then deleting again. I am so tired, I don't know where to start. I stayed at Sarah's on Saturday night. Partly due to your advice and partly because Dan was out for the evening, and quite frankly, fuck being alone in my apartment right now. It was pretty cool. Been ages since we've had a girly night and all. Spent most of the evening watching chick flicks and with cheap microwave popcorn. We had just gotten past the winter fountain scene in the Bridget Jones, The Edge of Reason. I love that part. When I realized that Sarah had fallen asleep on the couch, I watched the movie until the end, curled up on the armchair, and I suppose being somewhere else gave me the false sense of security. Suddenly, I was there again, in the house.
Bobby doesn't like you.
Only this time it was different. It was clean, and the air was fresh, and it was beautiful. Dazzling light beamed in through the gigantic windows. I was in the little girl Elizabeth's room. It was tiny. All the furniture remained intact, and the toys were put away. All of the drawings stuck to the wall, except one. Mine wasn't there. Elizabeth appeared and cheerfully asked me to play, just as she had all those times before. We played. She had so many toys, mostly dolls. She had names for each one. I hesitated, but decided to comment on the drawings on the wall. I told her that they were lovely. She does them for all of her friends. She smiled at the compliment as she gazed at them, and then with a gasp, "I'll make one for you, too!" She chippered as she ran to fetch paper. I was taken back. Did that picture she did of me before, that I found all torn up, not exist? I stood back as she drew, and then I noticed a faint sound. Growling? No, sobbing. I stepped out into the hall. It was coming from downstairs. I edged toward the stairwell, leaning on the small cabinet as I tried to listen. How could he do this to me? I gave him everything. I could hear the occasional mumbles, although I couldn't distinguish them. I strained, mentally trying to stretch my ears to hear better. What are you doing? The cute voice came. I finished your drawing. I jumped and span around. Of course it was Elizabeth. I knew it was Elizabeth, but I could not control my reaction. I hadn't even realized I'd touched it. I didn't even realize it was there until I saw it hit the floor. A glass of deep purple liquid, grape juice, had been resting on the cabinet, and I had knocked it onto the rug. The glass smashed as it hit the floor. "Oh no!" she shrieked. "Mama's gonna be so angry!" She turned to run for her room, tears in her eyes. "Elizabeth, I'm sorry," I called, studying the mess I had made and trying to figure out how to best clean it. Then I realized the voice downstairs had stopped. I could hear her stomping up the stairs. I saw her. The beautiful, thin woman from the woods. Her dress and her hair tied in a bun. She was beautiful, but somehow she looked so very broken. She stopped dead in front of me, eyeing the stain on the floor. Her lip curled and her nostrils flared as she breathed heavily through her nose. I took a deep breath and prepared to apologize and explain myself. "Elizabeth!" She screeched. The sound went right through me. "Elizabeth, you get here. What have you done?" I'm sorry. It wasn't Elizabeth's fault. It was mine," I began. But she shot past me and toward Elizabeth's bedroom. She pushed open the door with so much force that I thought it would fly off the hinges. I ran in behind her, still hoping to defuse the situation. For a moment, I thought Elizabeth had vanished. Then my eyes followed her mother as she stomped toward the closet. "It's my fault. I didn't see the glass and I knocked it. I'm so sorry. I'll have the rug cleaned." She ignored me.
Mommy doesn't like you.
The closet doors were flung open and I saw the tiny girl cowering amongst her toys. I gasped as her mother grabbed her hair and yanked her out as she scratched the closet floor in her attempts to remain hidden. "Please don't," I screamed and reached out for her. Only my hand went right through her. I stood there, dazed, staring at my own hands. "Mama, it wasn't me. Katie knocked it over by accident." "Enough about Katie. She isn't real. I am so sick and tired of hearing about your ridiculous imaginary friend, Elizabeth." "But she is real, Mama." "Enough." An almighty slap struck the girl across the face. I watched helplessly as tears formed in my eyes as Elizabeth pleaded her case. Her mother's eyes suddenly met Elizabeth's most recent drawing still laying on the floor. Elizabeth cried as she glided over to it and began to tear it. "I will not hear about this Katie anymore. Do you hear me?" "But Mama, she's my friend." "I will not hear about it. You are the bane of my life as you were your father's, so much so that he left for his mistress. We gave you everything we ever had, and you repay us with these ridiculous fairy tales?" She grabbed Elizabeth by her dress and pulled her from the room. I raced to follow as they entered the room opposite. I could hear the water running. Why was the water running? Had the water been running before? It couldn't have been. I would have heard it, surely. I ran in to see the sight that will forever haunt me. Please, stop, please! I screamed as I made numerous attempts to grab her, then grab Elizabeth and pull her from her mother's clutches. I went straight through. Have I always gone straight through? It dawned on me that although I had handed Elizabeth my bracelet, we had never actually made physical contact. I fell to the floor as I cried. I could only listen as the splashing eventually died down. I sobbed quietly to myself in a ball as her mother slowly stood up, still muttering about how her daughter had so badly wronged her. I only snapped out of it as she left the room. Without even looking in the tub, I ran after her, my heart burning with rage. I tried to shout at her, but nothing would get her attention. I even pushed over a statue as she passed, but she didn't even pause. I stood at the top of the stairs as she descended, lost. Eventually, I heard the main doors. I raced back to the window just in time to see her aimlessly wander into the woods. How could I be Elizabeth's imaginary friend? I'm living, I'm breathing, and I am very much real. I looked back down the hall aimlessly and noticed the diary sitting exactly where I had dropped it from the nightmare before. Before I had even taken a step towards it, everything around me grew black. The damp mold had returned. The dim light from the outside was now leaving an eerie glow. The stench from the bathroom now explained. My heart wept knowing what waited in there. Then came the croaking. I raced from the stairwell, past the open door to the mother's room. The noise echoed through the house. It was as if she was no longer a single creature. She was this house. She was every bit of the heartache and tragedy that happened here. Every bit of hatred and rage. Every bit of torture and guilt that added to Elizabeth's mother's mental decline. What was fueling her? I reached the doors and pulled, and then I pushed. The doors would not open. Suddenly the panic set in. This is how I end the dream. This is how it worked before. I opened the doors and escaped the house, and then I would wake up. I span around to face the house as the terror set in. I felt like a helpless mouse cornered by a very hungry cat, but I couldn't see her. I tried the windows, but they wouldn't budge. I tried to smash them, but they wouldn't even crack. I saw the bloated face coming towards me from the shadows. Her long limbs pulled herself and her nails scraped across the floor. I ran back up the stairs. I don't even know why. I ran into the end of the hall, half thinking I could smash that window, but even if I succeeded, I knew I would never have made the jump. I could feel my heart pounding as she grew closer. I grabbed the door to my right and shut myself in. The stench was overwhelming. I gagged and I coughed, letting out a silent scream as I realized where I had locked myself. I glanced at the bathtub in horror before returning my eyes to the door. I could hear the scraping and the banging, but somehow she couldn't get in. I fell to my knees, part relief, but also grief. Eventually I went toward the bathtub. Rotting limbs hanging out as if her bloated little body floated face down in the dark, murky liquid. A part of me wanted to cradle her, but all I could do was cry. I'm so sorry, Elizabeth, I sobbed. I am so sorry. I will do anything to do this, to give you a second chance at life. I am so sorry. Fantastic. Sorry for what? I jumped myself awake to see Sarah staring at me. Dude, you were talking in your sleep. I was? What did I say? Well? Sarah chuckled slightly. Mama, I'm sorry, Mama. She laughed as she did her impression. I could feel myself going red in the face. Come on, what were you sorry for? I told her the dream, and that it was me that spilt the drink on the rug. That's some freaky-ass shit, she grinned. I think to her, maybe it was all just harmless. A harmless dream.
Mommy doesn't like you.
I came home yesterday afternoon. Sarah still lives with her parents, and they were back in town, so that would make staying another night a bit awkward. Plus, Dan was back. I was supposed to work a shift, but I called in sick. I wouldn't usually, but I just didn't feel like I had a handle on life right now. I spent most of my time in my apartment with my curtains shut. I don't know if it's my anxiety that's catching up again, but I don't feel safe at all. I feel like I'm constantly being watched, so I haven't slept since. I went to the doctor's earlier today. I don't know what I hoped the results would be. He prescribed me sleeping pills. I don't know if that will solve my problem at all. I'm approaching 48 hours without sleep, and I don't know how long I can carry on with it. My eyes feel so heavy and I can't focus. Surely it's all over now. If Elizabeth has shared her story, then maybe she'll be ready to rest. Katie can't talk to you anymore. She's sleeping.
Hey guys, I gotta say I really enjoyed doing this story. I definitely screwed up the word sleep paralysis every time. Oh my gosh. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And I know what it says. It's just every time I read it, I said something completely different. Anyway, I had so much fun doing this video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it, or you just enjoyed it a little bit. Alright guys, stay savvy.